it's Casey. Today I want to show you an easy way to mold your own T-bars. T-bars are a little piece that goes inside the Blythe doll that makes the eye mechanism work correctly. And a lot of times what we do is we trim off the top of that so that the eyes can sort of roll up a little bit more. Instead of having a gaze looking down, we can sort of gaze correct the doll's eyes so it looks more natural. So a lot of times we trim these too short, or we break them, or we have an accident or whatever, and we need another T-bar. So I wanted to see if there was a good way that we could mold them so that I could sell them in my shop without having to buy them from overseas. And I heard about this mold putty, and it's called, I think it's the Amazing Mold Putty or something. I got it just at the regular craft store, but you can buy it online. The brand is Illumilite Corporation. And it's really easy to use. What you do is you mix the two together. We're going to go ahead and do one and I'll show you. Mix it together, and then you stick the whatever you're molding in it, and you let it sit, and it creates a very soft, flexible mold within just about a half an hour. It's really fast. In fact, it's so fast that some of the tutorials that I watched, depending on the size of what you're trying to mold, it can dry on you before you're done. So it's really good for small things. So I thought it would be great for T-bars. So let me first show you this part, and then we're actually going to pour the resin in and make the molds, which I haven't done yet. Well, I did one, but I want to mess around with dyeing them sort of white and maybe with some glitter just for fun. So we're going to do that. So let's make the mold first. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the same amount of each color. So you really don't need a lot. It's about that much. And just so you know, it costs, I mean, if you're not planning on molding a lot of different things, it's probably not worth doing this, just because the mold itself, I think it was around $20 for just the putty. And then you have to buy the resin as well, which is also about the same. So you get 2 balls of each one about the same, and then you mix them together. And this is the part that you kind of have to hurry, especially if you're going to mold something larger. You have to mush it all together until there are no more swirls and it's a uniform color. It only takes a few seconds. It doesn't take very long with such a small amount. You can find a lot of other tutorials about this mold putty as well. But I've been thinking a lot about the possibilities, other things that I might be able to mold, so I'm kind of excited to see. I'd like to try something to do with shoes, but we'll see how this goes. And then you want to roll it into a ball and get any sort of lines or cracks out of it. And then you're just going to take your T-bar or whatever you're molding, and you're going to want to put the flattest part up. And that's because we're not making a 2-part mold. We're only making 1 part. So when we pour the resin in, it's going to be flat on the side. You can make 2-part molds with this putty. I haven't tried it yet. I'm hoping to. So just push it down in there really well. I always kind of push around and make sure it's connecting on all sides. And you can kind of flatten the bottom so that it sits and doesn't tip over or roll over. And that's all you do for the mold. So then you go ahead and set this aside, and in about 30 minutes it will be dry and ready for resin. So that's the first part. That's the really easy part. The second part is buying the casting resin. And the nice thing is it's basically the same process. You mix equal parts. The first time I did it, I tried to mix the smallest amount in this cup. They give you a measuring cup, but we're going to go ahead and mix them into a different cup. This This mug, this wonderful mug, has become my craft mug, and you need a stick to stir it. The kit comes with a couple things to use, but we'll just use that. So I read on the thing that it really works best when you do at least an ounce of mixing it together. So we're going to do a 1/2 ounce. Well, actually, let's do a full ounce of each one. I don't know how much it's going to take to fill all these little molds. And I put them on a book because I want them on a really flat surface, and this is an old book that's kind of like for crafting. So I don't mind if the resin pours onto it. So what my plan is to mix the resin together. I'm going to put some glitter in it, and I'm going to put some white paint in it that I got that is specifically for resin. So this is the paint that I got that is supposed to go into resin. I was a little bit cautious about getting it because it's got quite a lot of warnings on it, but I assume because we're just going to use a little, we'll be okay. If it's really strong, I probably will just not use it because it doesn't need to be white. So as I said, you're going to mix your resin in equal parts. So let's look at the ounces on the cup, and we'll do 1 ounce. And the resin does not dry as quickly as the mold. In fact, my trial run, and this is probably way too much, but that's okay, we'll try it out. My trial run, I realized that they didn't dry for a couple, like it didn't, I think it says 24 to 48 hours, but it was definitely a couple days before the resin was nice and cured. So don't expect it to be really quick. And I'm going to use this stick to get it all out so that we can measure correctly. And it's the same kind of deal. So you're going to pour each type, we're going to do the same from the other bottle, and you're going to mix them together, and you don't want any swirls. They have to be thoroughly mixed together. It's not super strong, but probably if you were doing this a lot, you'd want to wear a mask. And then I just throw away that measuring cup because it's pretty much impossible to reuse. Okay, so as you're mixing, I think this is about the time that we want to add the color. So I think you just need to add a drop or two, or however much you want, till it's the color you want. So let's just try putting a little bit in there and see what happens. You can see that it's turning really white, so I think that that's going to work well. The only problem is that I realized it's hard to see if you've got all the swirls out, but it'll probably be fine. So let's add some glitter and see how that works. I don't know how it's going to affect the resin. Hopefully it works out well. Maybe a little more. It doesn't really matter what color the T-bar is. It's going to be inside the doll, and you know, it's not going to be seen. I just thought it would be kind of fun to have the ones that I'm going to sell be fun colors. So it does smell kind of strong. It's not really bad or anything, but I can definitely smell it. All right, and so what we're gonna do is we're going to use the stick to let it kind of just drip into the mold is my plan. And 2 of these molds were made from a T-bar that kind of had a flaw in it, surprisingly. So I'm just gonna use those as practice. But let's try this. And because it takes so long to dry, you should be able to kind of scrape off that excess and also make sure there's no bubbles like in that one. I don't know if you saw that big bubble that just popped. So I'm gonna try to do that just so it's not so much cleanup. Probably in the future I will wear gloves to do this. The first time I did this was a little more controlled and I didn't make such a big mess because I was only doing one. So I would say probably next time gloves. I don't know how bad this is to get on my hand, but I'm seeing quite a few bubbles, so I'm gonna make sure there's no bubbles going on. All right, so that looks like a huge mess. I'm gonna go wash my hands and get this off and then we will clean up. Okay, so I've cleaned up the mess and we're gonna let these sit now and wait because, like I said, it might take a couple days. So I will come back and show you what they turn out like. And I saw a bubble on this one, so I'm popping it. You wanna make sure there's no bubbles. So I'm seeing a couple and so I'm going to get rid of them. And then I wanted to show you, so the little mold we made in the beginning is done, basically. It's really fast, like I said, so you're just going to kind of pull it apart and pull out that T-bar and you have yourself a mold, and it's very simple to make the mold. So we'll see how the resin comes out, and I will be back with more info about that when they're done. Okay everyone, so it's been a couple of days since I poured the resin. I did take one out and process it just to make sure that it had worked. So they look good. So let's take one out and I will show you the processing procedure after it has dried. So one of the things that I noticed from this round is that there were a lot more bubble issues. So I don't know if you can see very well that this very corner has a little bit of a chip, and that's because there was a bubble there. So after I had poured the resin, I did go around a little bit and pop bubbles as they were drying for the first couple hours. So I didn't show that part, but you might want to watch for that. Also, some of them, I did take a couple out. These are the two. This one has really been processed and this one hasn't. Because the other thing you have to realize is that hole has not been preserved because the resin goes down in there. So you do have to create that hole after you have molded them. So there is a little bit to the process once it's dried. And they might vary from mold to mold. So let's try this one. So when you pull the mold apart, it's flexible. And you should be able to just pop that right out. And one thing that I've noticed, if you try to pop them out too early, the stem will be really flexible. So you want to give it enough time that this is hardened up. You don't want that to be really flexible. And then as you can see, there's parts like here in this corner where the resin needs to be trimmed. So you want to get a really sharp pair of scissors with a very sharp tip where you can cut off those excess pieces. This one looks relatively good. I think the sun is going behind a cloud. It's getting really dark all of a sudden in this room. I hope you're going to be able to see. So then the other thing I do is I take one of the, like a Blythe screw, and you know, if there's already kind of a hole there, which this one there is, you might be able to just poke the screw through. And as long as the screw goes through, you shouldn't have a problem. If not, and we'll look at some that are a little more covered up, you can use what's called an awl to push it in there and make that hole. Some of them are easier than others because this one's pretty flexible, so it didn't come out as thick. Let's look at one, like say this one, and see what this one looks like. So this one is going to require a little bit of processing around the edge, and you can just use your sharp scissors to cut off that excess. But as you can see, there is no hole already started. So what you can do is push that all in there and push it down on top of it. And what it's going to do is it's going to break that resin and push it up here. And so what I do is take an X-Acto knife, a really small one, like this, and then cut around there like that. You also can sand it a little bit if needed, but most of this is just kind of for aesthetic purposes to make it look more like you know, the original T-bar, because it's probably not going to matter very much once you use it in a doll. So let's look at a faceplate and we'll see if we can put it on a doll to make sure that it works. For this face, this is a fake Blythe faceplate, and I'm trying on the original and it fits. So let's try on our molded one. So it feels like it takes a little bit of extra effort to get it on there, but it's definitely on there, and I don't have the eye mechanism in place. So let me see if we could try to put a mechanism on there. So there we go. Our molded one is in place. Now we have to make sure that the screw can go in. And so this might take some reworking. I have to take it off and use your awl to make the hole larger. Let's do that. And you can see it's working just fine. And normally you'd trim some of that off if you're going to use it. The only other thing I'll say is the glitter all sank to the bottom, so it kind of was pointless on these. I probably won't do the glitter again. because you're not going to see it because it's all underneath. So it was kind of a good idea, but it didn't really work out. So I think just making them white, just like the original ones, will be great. So they might take some processing, as I said, and some adjusting as you mold them, but it's a great way to get, you know, a replacement part if you need one. I am probably going to be listing these in my shop as I kind of try to perfect the process and, you know, make them good enough. So if you're interested, I will put a link below to where to buy them. If you do not want to make your own and would like to just buy it, if you need another one, I will do that. So like on this one, you can see there was a bubble there. So that's going to be the issue, is making sure. I can see that this one probably has a bubble too. I can see it deep inside, right there. So that's an issue that will have to be worked out. I know there are a few ways to work on that, like you can spray something on top and it will make all the bubbles come to the top. So it looks like that was a really bubble heavy area, so that would also be a place probably to watch. So I'm definitely going to do another set of these and play with it and see if I can perfect the process. This one looks pretty good. So as always, thank you so much for watching. If you try this out and you find some tricks or tips, please let me know in the comments or email me. I'll put my email below. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching and talk to you later. Bye bye.